This is the most professional we've been.
Am I the first one to sit on the swivel chair?
No, you're the second one. Paul Adams was the first one.
Oh, okay.
Because we, mense het gekla oor hierdie stoel wat, ek het 'n kwaai stoel, hulle het the audience complained for the guest. That the guest didn't have a nice chair. Then I had to go and spend money. Lucky for me, that week the chair was on sale.
On the shot in terms of focus, so you can know on angles and stuff.
Is this stuff all set on manual? Okay, ready to go? Go. Okay, quiet. Mr. Adriaan.
Hello, how are you?
So listen, Jason is my guest today, and the reason I brought my brother in as a guest was because he's now been an an entrepreneur for a full year and a bit. And I've been doing it for a long time, but I was always very alone in that. Now my brother and my sister and my wife and my brother, my one brother-in-law, all have their own businesses, so I'm not so lonely anymore.
As my mother says, no one in this family works for a boss.
Niemand werk nie.
And she doesn't say, I don't know if she says that as like a compliment.
So if you hear like somebody's mowing a lawn next door, ons stoot voorwaarts because Jason's still going to the gym.
This was nou nie Kaap, man. Athleisure die heel dag.
Athleisure.
You never know when you need to go for a hike, eh?
Yeah. Luister, so, how's it been? Tell the people, first of all, how's it been moving? Because you moved your whole life.
Yeah.
Jason's story is this. One night I get a phone call. He says, I think I'm going to resign. Then we talk about this resignation. And then half an hour later, nou dink ek mos nee is nou 'n ding wat ons gaan oor gesels oor 6 maande. Half an hour later, he sends me a mail, he's resigned. So then the next day you sold a car, you wrapped your house up, literally in a week, and then...
Yeah, and it's, listen, I am I'm actually like impulsive sometimes when it comes to decision making, because I feel like if I don't push myself to do something, especially a big decision like that, I'm just not going to do it. And, I mean, like the idea of starting my own business has been with me for so long that I felt like, okay, I'm mid-30s now. If I wait any longer, it's going to be very, very difficult to leave a job. I think career-wise, I was also at a place where things were getting too comfortable.
Yeah.
And when it gets that comfortable, there's absolutely no reason to leave at some stage because, and I just felt I needed to push myself to do that. So, I sent that email. I literally, that resignation email, I remember sending it and then closing my eyes and going, wat het ek nou net gedoen? What did I do?
Yeah.
But fortunately, we had planned so many activities. I mean, like I was finishing up my, at business school at Wits. I think I had my final exams coming up.
Yeah.
We had the trip to the US planned like a week after that. So my mind was super busy, and then the move to Cape Town. So my mind was like preoccupied with like 1,000 things.
I think it was deliberate.
Yeah.
Also.
Probably.
I think we must go back a little bit. So Jason, this is not the first time you've really taken on your own business. But when Jason came out of university, he started a dev business where he was making some money independently, and that's how you ultimately got into the job, because you were working as a consultant for the place you were working for.
Yeah.
And then they took you on and you became the head of that department for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you left that security. So like the realities of, it's very different when you're young.
Yeah.
Ne? Wanneer jy jonk is and you come out of university, you never had any money, you make a little bit of money, you feel like you're winning.
Yeah.
Then you get into a stable situation.
Yeah.
Then it feels like now you're letting go of a salary. You have an apartment to pay. You've got a car. You have responsibilities. And you get used to a check.
Yes.
And then that Monday, I always told you this. I tell all of you this. I tell them all. When you leave your job, that first Monday is the most difficult one when everyone's going to work and you're not.
Yeah.
Because it messes your mind up.
Listen, I think that the biggest part of this whole thing that people don't talk about is the like psychological journey. Because like when you are in a job for as long as I was, I mean, I think I did like 11 years in corporate.
Yeah.
And you get used to, there's so many things that come with a permanent job that is super reassuring and makes you sleep easy at night. You know when you're going to get paid, right? There's a community around you. So when you go through issues day to day, there's someone in the office that you can share those issues with. They help. You know, you guys are working and solving problems together. There's this job title, which gives you a sense of this is who I am in society, you know, a sense of self-worth. So there's a lot of things that come as part and parcel of a permanent job that when you leave it, like you don't realize that you needed it.
Yeah.
Because when you're on your own, my bro, jy's alleen, jong.
Just learn.
Jy
There's
is op jou eie.
Yeah. There's an endless amount of resources at your disposal.
In a company, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Any problem that comes up can be solved because there's other people, there's resources, there's money, yeah, it's. I'm not saying it's easy to have a job. It's obviously comes with its own set of challenges, but when you leave that environment, and also 11 years. Remember, I was at the same company for 11 years. When you leave that, there is a sense of mourning as well because you've left a life behind.
Yeah.
That friends, people that you spoke to every day, and you kind of like, you almost like mourn that chapter in your life to some degree. And it took me a few months to get over that. Just getting like, okay, you must now solve these problems by yourself. But what I will say is, I think that there was also a plan B thinking, which is very detrimental if you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Which is like, I can always go back to a job.
Yeah.
Thinking about the plan B is incredibly debilitating.
Yes.
There's this saying, I can't exactly remember where it's one of these explorers where they went to this island and they were supposed to like build like a settlement on this island. And the guys that were, that were there, the captain realized the guys weren't fully engaged with the project of building a settlement. And he decided he's going to set fire to the boats. Because then if you set fire to the boats, there's no way off.
It's very real.
We're in here and we're going to make this thing work. And that's where the saying, let's burn the boats comes from.
Yeah.
Is you have to decide, we're going to burn the boats. There's no plan B. I want to make this work.
Otherwise, weird story is that one of the only things, I never mourned the loss of my day job. You worked for a year longer. I was in corporate for 10 years. You were 11. I've been a comedian for 3 years longer than what I was in my corporate job. You realize that?
Yeah.
And I didn't mourn that job. I didn't mourn the loss. There was no mourning. There was a panic the Monday because I was like, hey, I'm going to make this work now. But what I will agree with, I had the same experience, is that I was sort of keeping nice with all the people that were references on my CV. I would like be overly like keep in contact with them. How you doing? Now these are my friends too, but they weren't like my buddies. Like I was specifically going out of my way to keep a good standing with people because in case I needed to go and find a job again.
Yeah.
And that lasted for a good 2-3 years until I went, there is just no chance that Alfred Adriaan, especially now, how would I find a day job now?
Imagine.
Imagine. Hoor, Alfred, kom vir 'n interview for a marketing job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible, but those, you have to let go.
Yeah.
And you have to, the other thing about having a lot of resources at your disposal, when you on your own, you realize how resourceful you can be. Jy moet hy ding laat werk.
Yeah.
Like, look at like the last year now. So before we get into that, just tell the people what you actually do for a living. No one knows what you do. Almal dink jy lê leeg mos.
Yeah, listen. So I've got two businesses. The one is the education business, which I've been fairly public about, which is trying to get kids into the right institutions and studying the right thing. But primarily what I do is I'm a software developer and I run a software development business. And so we've got clients, we work with, it's a B2B business. We work with other businesses and we build software for them.
Yeah.
So whatever business processes or things that they need assistance with, we help out and we handle the project. And that's primarily what I do.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last year and a half. And I've been focused a lot more on the software development business over the last, I'd say probably 8 or 9 months than I
Yeah.
have been with the education stuff. The education business is one that takes a very long time to set up. There is
Yeah.
an incredible amount of bureaucracy involved in the education system. If you're ever frustrated with the education system, just understand that everyone that is in that ecosystem is equally frustrated, because it's very difficult to move things move things along faster, because it's just a complex space.
Yeah.
So the software development business is where I spend all my time and energy, and I've been fortunate in that it's been going well. But yeah, there has been a lot of learnings that I've had around just managing myself. It's so important to focus on, like, you're the entrepreneur. People get paid or not, or not based on the work that you do.
Yeah.
And so everything depends on whether I am doing what I need to be doing. And no one's managing me. No one's telling me get out of bed, send the email, take the meeting, think about the strategy a little bit different. No one's doing that. I have to do that. So I have to take care of the way that I think. I have to take care of the way that I, go about my day. I need to take a lot of responsibility for myself. And yeah, I've had to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
Because up until leaving that permanent job, I was on autopilot. I didn't have to think about any of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get a salary whether I reached my KPIs that month or not.
Yeah.
So it's a different world.
It's a completely different world. It's also like, I think for the first time you could relate to what I deal with in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think people, like everyone, like what I have always had an issue with Instagram and the social media culture is that there was a long time where people glamorized this idea of everyone should have their own business.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, and it's okay to be in a day job. Some of these day jobs pay really well and people are really happy there and they should stay there.
Yeah.
It's not like they glamorize this, and they don't show the realities of what a business person, especially a small business person, is dealing with. Like, just setting up this podcast studio cost me an enormous amount of money and I haven't seen any money back yet.
Yeah.
Like, you've been here.
Yeah.
You've watched it. Every time you come here, there's a different piece of gear in the air.
Yeah.
And I've made not a single cent.
Yes.
And there's a lot of, like, you're chucking money at stuff and hoping that it's going to work. And there's a lot of panic and there's a lot of anxiety that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you that.
No.
They don't tell you that. And you are navigating. And then it's also like you are a software developer. For people to understand that Jason was frustrated almost his entire adult life, that people don't understand what software developers do. This is not a person that you call, an IT person you call when your printer doesn't work, when your emails aren't working properly. These are highly specialized jobs and functions that you have to go and study a BSc at a university to qualify into. So I say that because you've now studied that. You even went to WITS and studied further into management, like what do you call that?
Yeah. So I think the place where, like there's software development, which is just like people that, sit in front of and you can go and study a computer science degree and you can learn how to just speak to the computer and make it do things. And then there's what we do and what I studied, which is how do I apply this technology to actual problems that exist in the world? Because that's where the value is. The value is in how do we take all of this tech that exists and how do we make people's lives easier? How do we make business processes easier? How do we give consumers the experiences and the services and things they need? So I spent a lot of time in my education journey trying to understand how to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And now that I own my own business, I spend an enormous amount of time thinking about clients and customers and how to serve them properly.
Yes.
The software is almost secondary. That's weird. Like the software is, we're building tech and we're doing software development. But the primary thing we do is we're problem solving. We're solving problems real problems in businesses, and we just apply technology to those problems.
Yeah. And these are big businesses. He's not allowed to tell you all the businesses he works with, but it's just think about the big businesses that you know. He deals with all these very big public facing businesses. And if you don't get the right answer, these people are losing millions daily.
Yeah.
It's just to put it into a perspective.
Listen, I've been fortunate in that even when I was in my day job, I was exposed to massive platforms with millions and millions of people. And I remember the amount of anxiety and stress around keeping systems up that serve that many people, and like that a business depends on those systems running. So I've been through the mill, and I've earned my stripes to be able to deal with these issues. I don't advise anyone just jumping straight into the deep end. Having a job sometimes is great because you get to learn, you get to practice in your craft in an environment in which you're getting paid to learn almost. So I've gone through the mill. So now we deal with these big clients, and it doesn't feel it's not as anxiety inducing for me as it used to be.
Yes. Now, what I was trying to get at, there's that part of what you do.
Yeah.
And then now when you have a business of your own, and I'm seeing you going through it, you all of a sudden have a sales position.
Basically a sales.
Because what Jason has is he's got people that work for his company that are also software developers. He basically employs people to do what he used to do at other places. But now, yes, you have to pay those people salaries, and you are responsible for the next big contract coming in.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're working for one company for 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with these Alfred, Adriaan, Julius, this one, the next one. You've got to keep the work coming in.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different job that you don't have. Like you learning on the job. It's a yellow never done.
Listen, there's a lot involved with this. There's one thing is like you've got runway. Runway is like this. Okay, so for people that haven't done businesses before, runway is like the amount of money before you crash and burn.
100%.
Before there's nothing left. Okay, so you're always thinking about the runway, right? At any given point in time, ideally you want to have a few months of runway.
Yeah.
Because it takes so long to get a new client. It takes so long to go through that sales cycle with a new business. And so you have to give yourself as much time as possible. And the only way that you can do that is cut your expenses all the way to the bare bones.
Yes.
Like, listen, one of the big things that I had to do was sell my car.
Yeah.
When I moved to Cape Town and started my own business. And it was like a big deal because, you've got this nice car. Now you sold it. What's going on here? The world is falling apart. So
And family generally, like my dad, everyone, like they look at you. I know what's happening in Jason's life a lot more because we speak every day. But he's very involved in my business. I'm very involved in his, like from a just
like an advisor. It's great to have
positions.
a free consultant on call.
That's it. That understands your emotions.
Yeah.
So the reality is that for other family members that you're also close to, they don't know what's really happening. You bought this car last year. Everyone's proud of you. You did so well.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're selling this thing on a drop of a hat.
Wat
Moving to Cape Town. People panic. People call me from the side. I say, "All right."
Yeah.
That's what when you start a new business, you also deal with these like things that shouldn't be a big issue, but these are people that you love. And you care about what they think of you. And so that's also like a part that you have to get over. Like when I started stand-up, for the longest time, Daddy and them were panicking.
Yeah.
What maak hy?
I feel kind of like, listen, although I was there throughout that journey, obviously I wasn't in your shoes. And when Alfred decided to leave his job and go into doing comedy full-time, I was like looking back at it, it's an incredibly brave thing to do.
It doesn't seem...
Because no one knew you for like a good, 5, 6, 7 years or something.
Years.
No one knew who you were.
No, I wasn't
You
a
weren't doing
famous
shows.
stand-up comedian.
You weren't doing shows at the Baxter.
No.
You were essentially doing corporate gigs.
Yeah.
You were
trying to build an audience.
Yeah. So and you were going through that very like viscerally firsthand, also very by yourself. Even though our dad is an entrepreneur and has
Yeah.
always been a business guy.
Yeah.
It's difficult to explain. Or what you're going through, because you're going through it completely differently in a different city, in a different industry, in a different environment, in a different time.
Yeah.
And so you were very much on your own. And I was fortunate in that, you had gone through all of the kind of emotional, personal journey of becoming an entrepreneur. So I can lean on that very, very heavily, which is great, right? But it's not easy. And like parting ways with a car, or this idea of, ek is nou net, I'm going to be spending money and doing international trips willy-nilly, and just cutting your expenses down to the bare bones, where you're living comfortably, but you're not excessive in your spending, is a difficult first step to becoming an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Because you need that. You don't know what next month brings.
Yes.
You can't be spending 15,000, 20,000 rand per month on a car repayment or an insurance.
Yay.
And you don't know, okay, waar kom die next client vanaf? I mean, it's
Die ding-
completely irresponsible.
Also, what happens is that you, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there, or people that have their own businesses will relate. The idea that you initially left your job with, nah, always the first idea you had about how your business is going to run almost never works.
100%.
It's the side thing you thought about when you're in the hot seat that works. When I left my day job, I thought, I'm going to do corporates. I'm going to do corporates, and then I'm going to do some stand-up things and try and build a stand-up thing. And then it took me 5 years to figure out I needed to just make video. Then I did to get my popularity out. I was doing auditions and thought it was going to come. I had an idea of how my career was going to be, and it was completely different.
Yeah, I think to bring these 2 points together is when you leave your day job and you decide to become an entrepreneur, you're essentially deciding on doing a series of experiments that will hopefully result in you making money.
Yeah.
And you need a cash reserve somewhere, or some savings to allow yourself to do those experiments. And
Yeah.
so if you don't give yourself any opportunity to do at least 6 months to a year worth of experiments, bro, play in your werk.
Yeah.
Stay in your day job. Save up the money. Don't jump into the abyss.
They must stop airing these things on the Instagram, the whole jump idea, the idea that jumping
do it.
doesn't necessarily mean you leave a job. You can, I did Jason and I lived together, and I was in a day job and doing stand-up every night of the week. Dead tired going to work, but it was a way of sort of, you can try, and if you can do both at the same time, do that. I always tell people, don't just let go if you don't absolutely have to let go. But have the goal in your head and try and save up, like a runway, like you said, is very important. But the idea of just jumping and having no idea, it doesn't always work out. Out of 10 people that I know that have left their day job, 7 go back. It's not there's a high failure rate to going to, and I have seen businesses that I thought was going to definitely work fail. I've seen my friends burn through their whole pension. I've seen people having to make some drastic changes in their lives to get back onto their feet because of leaving prematurely, or the wrong idea, or the right idea at the wrong time, or there's so many things.
Listen, you can learn. You can learn a lot while you're still in a lot of these experiments. You can do a lot of them while you're employed.
Yeah.
You can learn your craft, for example, while you're employed. You can learn how to code. You can learn how to do comedy. You can learn how to do public speaking. You can learn how to do accounting. You can learn all of those basic skills that will form part of the core offering of your business. You can learn that while you're in a job, right? It's the moment where you realize, okay, this job actually has an opportunity cost to it. That's when you leave. Yeah. When you realize that, you know what, I'm making so much money from this catering business. the only thing that's keeping me back is I don't have enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
I already know how to cook. I already know how to find clients. I already know that this thing's going to work. I already have the kitchen set up. Things are moving already. The big hindrance in my life right now is the fact that I don't have enough time in my day to do this thing properly. Then you go, okay, cool. Let me leave this job because there's an opportunity cost by keeping this job.
And here's another thing that I want to caution people against. If you are working for a company and your idea is to become a service provider for that company because you have friends that work there and they're going to give you the jobs, as soon as you leave that job, everyone's done with you.
Yep.
You
100%.
cannot build a business based on your relationships in the current job you have. Now you want to become a service provider. You sat there in the office and you see that the outsourced cleaning staff is making a fortune. Now you're going to take that. You can do a cleaning staff job. You've got 10 people else. But as soon as you leave, everyone will tell you absolutely will support you. As soon as you leave the premises that day, they forget about you.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's a weird, stupid, it feels like an obvious thing, but I see so many people making that
But also,
mistake.
you can't just have one client in your mind when you leave. You have to think about this. Surely the service that you're providing needs to be applicable to multiple businesses, multiple customers. If you just have this one client and that client happens to be the company that you used to work for, then it's a high risk. High risk move to leave.
Another thing that makes Jason, my sister's business is a different one. They've got a dog grooming business.
Yeah.
So there's high levels of overhead there. But what makes Jason and my business work really well is that he can program. He knows how to program. I know how to make jokes. It's a very low cost thing to start.
Yeah.
If you have a business that has a high overhead, the barrier to entry into that business is a high overhead, then you must just also be careful of that. That's another thing.
So, listen, it depends on the phase, obviously. I think that a B2C business where you need a lot of capital investment in order to get started is very difficult to get started. But once you have it established, it's quite a nice thing because you have this moat around the business because, competitors are going to be hesitant to enter because it's so bloody expensive to just get the thing started.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult at the beginning because you're spending an enormous amount of money. Building a B2C business, is a business to consumer type of company, is difficult in South Africa because the scale at which you need to operate at is so high in order to make money. Yeah. And it's so expensive to build that scale.
Yeah.
Because you need lots of infrastructure in order to make it work. Yeah. So a services business, a B2B business, which is the type of business that I have, where you're servicing other businesses and it's your service provider, it's more affordable at the beginning to get
starting up is easier.
Yeah,
starting up is easier. That's basically.
Hopefully, you can do the work yourself, though.
Yes.
In both of our cases, we do the work ourselves.
Everything.
If you are a guy that wants to start a software development business, but you aren't a software developer,
good luck.
My bro, now you have to pay 50 to 100,000 rand a month to get one guy to work on one project. So
one of the big things, now I've got Kashif here, right? But one of the big things with this podcast is the first time I actually depend on someone coming in permanently, because the reality for me is always to keep my overhead low. And I'm so used to being self-reliant that it's almost weird for me to get someone else to help me, right?
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that comes from a guy that understands to keep your overheads low is critical. Like keeping these overheads low is it's like the difference between winning and losing. Business people will tell you, "Oh, I overhead." I've looked at people that start restaurants and then the rent is 45,000 rand a month, and the coffee machine that they have to rent because they can't buy it because it's 150,000 rand coffee machine.
Yeah,
it becomes, these are all calculations you can do while you're in your day job.
Yeah,
you don't have to go out there and face that reality. Before.
Listen, and I guess the education system to some degree, when you go and do a business management or study business management, even at school, business studies or whatever, They kind of like make you think that it's normal to spend that amount of money in a business that's only getting started, like, which to me is just insane. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I'm not the type of, like, I don't think we both have bootstrap businesses. So businesses that we started ourselves, fund ourselves. We
Yeah.
don't have anyone investing. We don't have any banks breathing down our necks about
When's the payment
loans or
coming in?
whatever in order to get the business started. But so many people are taught that it's normal to start a business where you're spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rands to get it started. Already, I'm talking about runway.
Yeah.
Already you're on a back foot because you got like 1 million, 2 million rand in debt just because you
Yeah.
started this business,
I think
which is difficult.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that we're lucky in the sense that because of daddy's business, I think maybe we just like really careful around that because we saw how expensive things gets really quickly. So
Yeah.
we've always been leaning towards how do we make this thing work as cheaply as possible, and then we grew it from there. And now we're very fortunate that this I've got a group of people that I work with that I can pull on a freelance basis to make everything work. We even shoot productions for television with freelancers that I've grown to depend on. But I'm not like, I didn't start out going like, I need to employ 7 people. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got their own way of operating. Yeah, I think B2C businesses, I think any entrepreneur that you ask in the world will tell you it's very difficult.
That's hard.
Very difficult to start those businesses, but I have an enormous amount of respect for the guys that do and manage to make it work because that is tough.
I'm technically a B2C guy. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get all of my whole existence works because I've got consumers. I straight to my consumer.
Yeah.
These videos go straight to the people that are buying tickets to my show, that are supporting me so that I can get corporate gigs, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Social media has changed the game, particularly in your business, because you've got a way to reach or market to your
Directly,
audience
yeah.
without spending money.
Yeah.
Like, rewind 15 years,
Dude.
your business is a very challenging business to
Oh,
get
it's
started.
hard.
Maybe 20 years ago, right before
Yeah.
Facebook or whatever. It's very difficult because now every time you do a show, you have to buy out-of-door advertising. You
Yeah.
have to go on TV. You have to go
Yeah.
on radio. You have to buy this extremely expensive advertising in order
Very
to
much
reach your
so.
people.
Like-
So that's been a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, like if a comedian like Mark Lottering and Barry Hilton, those guys back then, they also needed a break from TV. Like somebody, I remember really when Mark and Barry got onto our radar, and the Casper de Vrieses, was because they had TV shows or
Yeah.
TV productions. You know how hard it is to come off the street as a artist that no one knows to try and get that show onto a television with no real audience. You have to build an audience with no social media.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you start. I don't know where you would start
difficult.
with that.
That's very difficult.
Anyway, so now the business is it's more than a year old. You've had a couple of ups and downs.
Yeah.
Have you become a little bit calmer, or are you able to sleep better?
I
What
still
are the
don't
things
sleep.
that you still don't sleep? Okay.
Well, I'm I always say, like, during the day, during office hours, traditional office hours, from like 7 in the morning to like 5 at night, the world is an incredibly distracting and busy place. So it's difficult to think clearly. So I like spending a lot of my evenings thinking about, like, how do we go forward? What do we do next? What is the next move? So I spend a lot of time in the evening doing that, and that's why my sleeping pattern's all messed up. But what I've learned, I think there's a couple of a lot of lessons that you learn at every phase. So first it was like just getting started, which was what we just spoke about, like that emotional roller coaster, figuring out your personal finances, making sure that you have runway, all of that, right? And then now you get started and you've got customers, you've got clients. It's a different world. You think getting clients was the end goal.
Yeah.
It's the start of the journey. Now all of a sudden you have to figure out, okay, cool. I now have customers coming in already. Like, I remember the first time I had a paying customer, which was when I was a student. And I remember thinking, just getting a client was such a lot of work. It was so difficult to just get a client. I thought that was like, I made it. This is I've gotten what I wanted. I've achieved everything. And then afterwards you realize, oh, actually, no, it's only getting started. So now where I'm at is I've got a few people working with me. It's like figuring out the processes, figuring out like how do you take it from something that it was just a one-man show to something where it's now like a team of people working together, operationalizing it, making sure that like there's a processes, and how to remove yourself from those processes.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people get stuck on that part of the journey where they're doing all the work. You think about every business where the uncle is in the kitchen om curry te maak because he's got a catering business, because he doesn't know how to remove himself from the processes.
Yeah.
So like doing that is like on top of my mind, like has been on my mind for a while. Is like how do you remove yourself from the day-to-day processes? Because it's more important that you focus on looking forward than it is on you focusing on the day-to-day. It's important to keep an eye on what's happening day to day, but your mind needs to be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years.
Yeah, and what you also find is you taking yourself out of that business is important, but you're never going to scale the business if you are involved in every minute detail. That's something I've had issues with as well. You've got to let go so that I only have so much time in my day. If I'm doing all the camera work,
you're the bottleneck in your business.
The problem in the thing, and then there's a time, and it's nerve-wracking because it's like dropping your first child off at school for the first day because you don't know if it's going to be okay without you there. Yeah. And then there's a very insecure feeling.
So always ask yourself, you need to map your current existence and how you operate your business to the people that you look up to. You don't see Raymond Ackman at the till. You don't see Jeff Bezos in the packing room. You don't see Steve Jobs sitting and coding. You don't see Elon Musk okay, well, Elon Musk is a different story. But, you don't see him building an engine there on his kitchen table. The point that I'm making is that you need to be a business owner. You can't be an employee in your own company because otherwise you're not running a business.
Another thing I've noticed is that you've got to also and I've seen in my business, I've had you, which is great because you are my brother. You can tell me exactly what's wrong and I must get over myself. We've had arguments because of it, but I am not, I must get over myself. You need to be able to take in criticism on your business and not get bitter about it, but rather take it on and make the positive changes out of it.
Yeah.
Because what with me, for example, for a long time, I would, it's very personal to me. So like, I wouldn't listen to people. You know what I mean? Like you need to be able to go, like someone from outside must be able to tell, that you trust, must be able to tell you, Alfred, like a lot of the stuff you did, like in the early days, believe it or not, there were simple things I wasn't doing, like that Jason had helped me to change. So like the first thing was my videos were doing well, but I was posting it all on a personal page that couldn't really grow beyond a certain point. Then he would go, no man, just put it on there, make a public page, have a website. And these were obvious things, but it made a huge difference. When we recorded my first special, you were the one that said, okay, you need to do it with these and these and these people. And that's why you're a producer on that first show. And then together we took my business to the next phase because now I was technically, my company for the first time was producing one-man shows and selling it as an independent. And I'm probably one of the few comedians that do that.
But also you learned a lot from that experience. I mean, like that first special that you did was... like you learned how to put a production together at that scale. How do you record a show at the Lyric Theatre in Johannesburg, a sold out show? You've got vans outside. I mean, that was an insane undertaking.
I remember arriving there going like, yo, he's 3 trokke buite and then a live director cutting the thing in a truck like it was a sports event.
Yeah.
I also remember it being so expensive that you started to notice how expensive it was and said,
Yeah.
"Meneer Warringelaar, ek betaal vir die job cam." Jason paid for the boom cam on the first production of the family meeting. So
It's listen, but I think there are certain times, obviously everyone must make these calculations for themselves. It's great to be frugal and to try and save money where you can, but also there are moments where you have to go like, yeah, I am going to mess this up.
Yeah.
I need to get a professional guy in
Yeah.
that can manage this production. I need to get someone in that has 20 years of experience doing broadcasts, for a major broadcaster to come and run this thing, because I want to sell this,
Yeah.
the product here, to a company, a big company. I don't want to. This is not a mom and pop operation. I'm not going to put this on YouTube. This is something that needs to go on TV. So I need to invest the money, and you did do that.
Yeah.
And I think the product came out very well.
But and then in your business, when you left your day job, I had full confidence that it was going to work, because you sometimes people forget who they are. You would come into that job because you were having your own business. I always knew it was going to work.
Yeah.
And I know your mindset, and I knew you weren't going to go and blow your pension or anything like that. I knew how your mindset worked. And then when we got into your business, over time, we quickly moved on from ideas where we were like, hey, bruh, this thing's not going to pay your bills. It's eating into your runway.
Yeah.
Move on to this thing, this, bruh. And then there's moments where both of us have had to go, bruh, you charge the min for
Yeah.
put 30% on top.
Charging is a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Let me say this, I don't want to make it about race, but, like as a brown kid,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to put a price tag to our craft. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to understand our own value,
Yeah.
because we've been undervalued for so long
Yeah.
that we forget, I can also charge this amount of money.
Yes.
There's this weird built-in imposter syndrome where you send a quotation to a company and you're like, yeah, I'm really taking a chance here.
Yeah.
But the next guy is quoting
Charging double.
and I'm working myself to death.
Yeah.
I've had so many projects where I was doing it, I was doing it at like an amount where it was basically just paying for me to show up and do the job. There was very little left at the end of it to even share or go around. And I quickly had to learn, we need to start valuing ourselves a lot more, and we need to start thinking about this pricing thing.
100%.
I've seen so many people of color lowball themselves out of a business. They're so good at what they do. Well, it charged them.
Charge them in. And, I've seen it with, I mentioned this because it comes, because all of our family is almost in the construction business.
Yeah.
And all those guys have built beautiful houses and office blocks and are struggling to pension off. Where you go, how did that happen? When if you look at people outside of, let's not make it a color thing, but if you look at some businesses, construction businesses where the guy's got a second house in Spain, the same type of amount of work, they just know how to charge more. That's not their fault that they charge more.
Yeah.
It's our fault that we haven't. And it goes back to that thing that we don't have a safety net. Like, if you don't have a safety net, there's this feeling of, hey, if I charge too much, I might lose this job.
Yeah.
Whereas
You have to be
somebody
willing to
with
say, that's all right.
somebody that has the safety net goes, take it or leave it. I know my work is good.
No,
Hey, that's a tough thing.
it's very difficult
Yeah.
to go when it's your first, you don't have any business coming in, and to put down a price in front of someone because you're just so desperate for the work.
100%.
It's we operate from a place of desperation and fear too often, and we need to learn how to go, you know what? I'm worth this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put it in front of these guys, and they can say no if they want to say no. It's fine.
100%. I recently still made that mistake. I still have to be reminded. I recently got so excited about working on a project that I put the price down, and I was like, wait, man, this is so low. This is way too low because I don't want to lose the opportunity. But then you have to also remember who you are and how much work you've put in to get here, that these people want you to be part of a thing. That you have to go, no. This is the price. And if you guys aren't ready for this price, you're not ready. Then we must move on. But that's a moeilike ding.
Listen, I think not having a customer is a better scenario than lowballing yourself to the point where you're basically working slave labor.
Yeah, and
you
also
know?
you get angry at the person, and it's not their fault.
Yeah, you
They just
gave
got a
them-
good deal.
You gave them a good deal, and they took it.
Yeah.
I want to come back to this point of us constantly it being in this almost like survival mode, just lowballing ourselves, going out there, and essentially, because of the imposter syndrome, we destroy our own businesses because now we can't afford to expand. You can't afford to hire people. You can't afford to spend more money on marketing. You can't afford to do all of these things that you need to do in order to grow the business.
Yes.
When you look around at the South African,
Landscape.
economy, the whole landscape, right? And you look at successful business owners, small to medium-sized business owners, and guys that are back at their office job. It's not because those guys that have the successful businesses were better at the craft that they do. It wasn't because they were better at accounting, because they had their accounting firm, they were better at it, or better at software development than the guy that's back at his office job. They just approached things differently.
Yeah.
They thought about things differently. And they learned these lessons about how to manage themselves. Because there's a lot, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of like self-management and understanding that if I go into this meeting and I project confidence and I ask for the price that I deserve, and I put it in front of someone and they sign off on it, my business is growing.
Yeah.
But if I continuously make this decision of lowballing myself,
Yeah.
I am always going to be struggling, and eventually I'm going to be in a place where I need to go back to my day job. And so there's we need to change our mindsets about how we go into the world.
Yeah, no, that is a very difficult thing, and it's also like we need to teach that to our children to understand their value. And the best way to do that is to also do well enough to give our children the space in which they can make mistakes and not worry that they're not going to be able to eat the next day. We come from a generation of people that for the longest time, we would make decisions. You want the job because you're so nervous that if you fail at this thing, you are back at a day job, or even worse, back at your mother's house.
Yeah.
And so to give our children the opportunities, I hope to one day give Tyler and Ethan the opportunity to go out there bravely and charge what they need to charge, or to project that kind of confidence, because they know that, my security isn't changed if I don't get this work.
Yeah.
That's a big thing, but that's more of a social
So there's
economic
also this thing about that we have a tendency to do contingency planning as opposed to success planning. Like we for a very long time, I was always in this mind, and it's back to burning the boats again. But like for a very long time, I was always thinking about what if this doesn't work, what if that doesn't work. So you operate from a place of fear when you engage with the client.
Yeah.
And instead of approaching it with optimism and this is going to work,
100%.
we also, on the topic of success planning, we need to spend a lot more time thinking about what if this works out for me.
Yes.
Because we don't plan enough about what if this is successful? What if these guys sign off on this 10 million rand tender? What if this works out?
And
now you've got a different set of problems.
Different problems.
Yeah.
Often, like I've seen it with your business where
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've got to go, wait, man, I need to source 4 more people quick.
Yeah.
It gets to that. And thank goodness you've made those mistakes and learned from them.
Yeah.
But it gets like, you can be very successful.
Yeah.
And they're not ready and ruin your reputation.
100%. I think so many people, I've seen this very often, where people haven't done success planning. They haven't planned for successful outcome because they assume failure. Because failure is 90% of every client meeting, 90% of them are going to say no. And that's fine. That's normal.
Yeah.
But the problem is the 10% that say yes to you, now you're sitting with a massive problem.
Yeah.
Because you just got a 10 million rand tender. You now said you're going to cater, you're going to do all the catering for the World Cup final. Now you've got a real problem that you're sitting with.
No,
And you never thought about it because you didn't think it was going to work out.
100%.
But now, what do? How are you going to deal with that? We need to spend more time thinking about success and less time about failure.
100%. And I want to actually, we must wrap things up now because Jason's got to go. But I also just want to say that we spoke about businesses to no end here. But again, we go back to this thing. There's nothing wrong with having a fantastic job with career prospects and staying there and building that out and being part of an organization that works. This is not for everybody. And if you're in a day job and you feel, I always, when people go, should I leave my job? I always go, I should not be the one telling you to leave your job. You should be so convinced that this is going to work.
100%.
Don't depend on me to tell you, because out here it's rough and I'm not going to be there when things get worse.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, 100% agreed. Stay in your job. You should not need to be convinced to start a business.
Yeah. And nowadays, I know this, and this is something I told my dad, because he always wanted us to be in stable jobs, even though he'd never had a stable job. He was a business person his whole life. I tell him this all the time. I say, Dad, the reality is that there's no such thing as stability. Stability is a complete fiction. Day jobs don't really have stability. There's just, you don't see the horizon. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I know exactly when my runway ends in my business. I know when the trouble is coming. Ek moet 'n one-man show begin skryf. When I was in my day job, one morning I came into a very big company. It's a pharmaceutical business I worked for that made 2 billion rand, and we made 2.2 billion that year. We made more than 10% growth that year. And we got to work, and they called us all in and they said they were going to retrench. And they retrenched 54 people out of a team of 200. More than 25% was fired. They didn't see it coming. And they were paid off immediately and paid out the remainder of their service time, so that it wasn't illegal to fire them that way. But now all of a sudden these people had no jobs, and they thought they were in stable positions. So if stability is the only thing that's keeping you in your day job, and there's a brilliant business idea you've always wanted to try, maybe now is the time to dip your finger.
Yeah, listen, and the other thing is, if you are in a job, I think that even from this conversation, what you can take is day jobs give you this illusion of safety, and it gives you this illusion that there's an infinite amount of money coming in over a period of time.
Yeah.
Right? You might not have a great salary month to month, but you think that the money is endless. It's going to come in forever.
Yeah.
To Alfred's point, you don't know when you're going to get retrenched. But the other thing also is, don't get into unnecessary credit and debt and a financial situation because you think there's an infinite amount of money on the horizon. So you can take a lot of lessons from runway and how to think and how to approach negotiation and all of these things, and still have a day job and thrive. You can have a fantastic life having a day job.
Yes.
Just don't make terrible financial decisions.
And this coming from 2 people that have swiped credit cards in New York and have paid the price. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my brother Jason, and I think we're probably going to have him on again. Thank you for coming out.
That was fun. Cool.
And I just wanted to say, speaking about making things better, we have a friend to the podcast here, Seister, that came in to help today just to make the podcast look better. So if you guys see dramatic changes in the podcast, is because of Kashif and Seister coming in. And you see, I couldn't do it myself. I tried. Those first 3 podcasts, was horrible. Anyway, thank you. Have a lovely day.